Welcome to the Behind the Bits podcast. Your host, Scott Curtis, wants to learn everything he can about stand-up comedy and take you along for the ride. Scott and his guests talk serious about comedy in every episode. Behind the Bits will uncover knowledge from different perspectives on subjects such as writing and performing stand-up comedy, as well as booking shows and the comedy life. If you're thinking about becoming a stand-up comic, already in the comic game, or a comedy nerd, Behind the Bits is the show for you. Now, let's get Behind the Bits.
All right, it's interview number 2 on the Twitch platform. I feel like I need to explain this to you because I've got a lot of people who want to see the full video of my interview. I don't think it's for my face, but it's probably for the people I'm talking to. And I don't want to put out full videos because I only make money if you download the podcast. So I'm moving over to Twitch, and you got to make the effort to come over to Twitch to listen to or watch the whole video. And then maybe I can build my Twitch channel up so I'm making money both ways. And I'm trying to put out good stuff, but in the end, I just want to retire on this. So that's what it's all about. So come over to Twitch, watch me on Twitch. And not only that, but the BTB Internet Talk Show is moving to Twitch as well. And I don't want to confuse you even more. You're on the Behind the Bits channel right now, which is Behind the Bits, all one word. The BTB Internet Talk Show is moving to Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling. Why? Because it's a really cool channel, and I'm teaming up with my good friend John Poveromo to make must-see Twitch TV on Thursday nights. We're going to start at 7:30 with my show, the BTB Internet Talk Show, and then John's going to take it with Dystopia Tonight, baby. And it's just going to make Thursday so great. So get over to Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling and give them a follow. I think that's what you do on Twitch, follow. You either follow or subscribe. And if you go over there and follow and you shoot me a message, I might buy you a month's subscription. So just let me know. And that's all there is for announcements. I want to talk about the gentleman I'm bringing up. It's Corey Ryan Forrester, and he's been featured on HBO, ABC, BBC, CBC, Esquire, Forbes magazine, and he's a contributor for the Huffington Post and the Bitter Southerner. He's also got a popular podcast called Through the Screen Door that I want to talk about a little bit. It is Corey Ryan Forrester. Corey, let's bring you up.
What's Scott? How are you?
Very good. It's we had a very short introduction backstage, and I just want to say, folks, if you're watching, and it looks like we've got a few people already, if you're watching and you want to ask some questions at the end of the interview, just pop them up in chat, and I will ask Corey. However, I'm not going to pay any attention to you while I'm talking to Corey because that's rude. So it's just going to be me and Corey. Corey, I'm really glad to have you on. As I said, I'm a big fan. I've been following your video exploits for quite a while, and it's been really cool.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be on this show and actually talking about stand-up comedy for once in a while, because you can probably imagine there's a lot of people that they found me and don't even still know that I'm a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Because they saw my videos, and we've been during a pandemic, so it's not like I've been posting, hey, I'm about to be in Portland, I'm about to be in Seattle. So this is really nice to be talking about the thing I actually love.
Yeah. And in reading your bio, it looks like you were from a very young age just smitten by stand-up comedy. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, to me, I'm one of the very few people that is doing what they said they were going to do when they were 5 years old. Like I used to be the type of person that, because I was able to find success in my dream job, that I was always like, oh, you got to do it. You got to go for it, man. I've since learned that I got very, 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 very lucky, and that most people can't do that, because most people at 5 want to be Superman, and that job doesn't actually exist. But when I was a kid, I'm old enough to remember I'm talking about very early memories when I don't even know if I can walk yet, watching Johnny Carson with my dad. And then, of course, that moved into Leno, which I've actually found in recent years that I think my dad liked Letterman more as a person, but he was so loyal to the Tonight Show because of Johnny that he always just watched Leno.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's really weird that my dad's like that, but he's like, no, I think Letterman's funnier, but there was the Tonight Show. So I would watch the Tonight Show and stuff with my dad, and like I always had a bedtime, but my dad knew how much I liked the comedian. So if there was a comedian on, I could stay up a little bit later and watch the comedian. And I saw how the comedian made my dad laugh, and I thought, man, I really want to do that. But like I also thought, and I guess this is just how kids think. I was like, yeah, but those guys, they're all from New York and California. I can't do that. And then one day when I was a young kid, I was sitting crisscross applesauce, as I'm told they say now, on my grandmother's floor, and on comes the television, this man by the name of Jeff Foxworthy. And I hear him, and I see what and I'll never forget this in my life. The joke that he told was, I'm butchering his voice. It was like, if your new TV is sitting on top of your old TV, you might be a redneck. And I heard that joke at my grandmother's house while her new TV was sitting on top of her old TV, and I was like, oh my God, this guy sounds like me, and he's saying things like from my experience. And that's when I knew I could do it. And so it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. And I started doing it when I was 16, and I'll be 34 this year. So I've literally been doing it most of my life. Wow.
Now, it's kind of funny you mentioned Jeff Foxworthy. I know the guy that he originally pitched, you might be a redneck too. It was another comedian, and they were working together, I think in Wisconsin or Chicago. And he pitched it to my friend, and my friend said, that'll never work. It's a gimmick. That'll never work.
Isn't that great?
And that's another reason why you never, ever listen to other comedians when they give you advice. You got to do your own thing.
No, absolutely not. Like, comedians are the worst for advice. I had to learn. It took me a long time to learn that the comedy club owner who taught me the most was Michael Alfano in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And the best advice he gave me, it took me so long to realize it, but I would come off stage and he would be like, you're playing to the back of the room. He's like, you're absolutely killing those guys back there, but those guys are never going to buy tickets to see your show. Like, you can't think, like, he goes, there's so much stuff that I've heard you do that when you see the other comedians not respond to it, you stop doing it, but the audience loves it. And you have to understand that you're up there for the audience, not for the comedians. He's like, if you're good enough, those guys will like you. And realistically, when those guys hate you, it probably means you're doing really good. And that took a long time to realize that comedians don't necessarily give you the best advice. A lot of times I'd say that person, it's very possible that they really did like you might be a redneck, and they were upset that they didn't think about it,
Yeah. That's funny. Now, obviously you're smitten by comedy at 5, but when you became like a teenager and you were really getting into studying it, who were the people that you really thought were the best ones out there?
Well, I still to this day, the guy who sticks with me more than anything, God rest his soul, is Tim Wilson. I don't know if you were.
Oh, I love him. Yeah, I loved him. Yeah.
Tim was the best. When I was 15 years old, I'd said my whole life, which up until this point had only been 10 years, but my whole life I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. So me and my buddy Robbie, he was a couple years older than me, so he had a driver's license. I was 15 years old, and we went and we snuck into the Comedy Catch one night to see this guy, Tim Wilson. Now, backstory a little bit further on my relationship with Tim Wilson was that when I was a kid, my dad, well, he still is in marketing, but when I was a kid and radio was a lot bigger than it is now, Dad would do all the advertisements for the radio stations, and he would get to meet all these dudes who came in to do radio. Like, all the comedians always did radio. He has so many stories about hanging out with James Gregory and dudes like Tim and Killer Bees and all these guys. And he loved Tim Wilson, and they kind of they got along, and Tim would always give him CDs of his just for free, And I remember one time when I was a young kid, my dad lost both of his parents very early, and like within a year and a half of each other, and he was the only child, and he didn't have any other family. So my dad just went from family to no family really quick, and he was like. He went through a huge depression where my dad's always been the most fun-loving guy, but he didn't smile, he didn't laugh for years. And then one time, my mom just decided, hey, we gotta get out of town. We gotta go on a trip to change your attitude or something. So we go to Florida and we're driving down the road. And I just remember they're not arguing, but there's just like the silence is deafening, as they say. My dad's super upset. And my mom got tired of the car not having any noise in it, so she put in a Tim Wilson CD. And my dad laughed for an hour for the whole CD. And I just remember thinking, like, even more, I was like, I got to do that. Like, look what this guy on a CD just did. Like, he just changed my dad's life in this moment. We're going to have a good trip because of this guy. And so then I got older and I realized, like, oh my God, that Tim Wilson guy, he's at the Comedy Catch. So me and my buddy, we sneak in to the Comedy Catch and we sit in the back and we're watching Tim Wilson. And like, as you know, there's nothing like live comedy. Like, as funny as he was on the CD to me, live, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And I remember my buddy were walking out and he just goes, man, you're never going to be that good. and I was just like, I don't think I am. Like, it changed my life. Like, actually seeing the art form done, I realized how much work I had ahead of me. I realized that, like, I used to think, like, oh, whenever I get my driver's license, I'm going to go to the club, and as soon as I start, I'm going to be like Adam Sandler. I'm going to be famous by 18. Like, it's no problem. Then I saw Tim Wilson. I was like, I'm not even close to that. But I made it my goal to get as good as Tim Wilson. I've never achieved that, but it's still my goal. And I was 16 when I started, and then at 22, I got to open for Tim. It was the craziest.
Oh, wow.
It was awesome. So, like, I was able to get comp tickets. I brought my dad out, you know, like, it was a big deal. And then the next time Tim was in town, the club owner called me and was like, hey, Tim asked specifically for you to open for him. And I'm losing my mind. And then Tim comes up to me the first night and he goes, hey, we ain't going to have an MC. We're going to do a 2-man show. That way you can do 35. All right. How's that? And I'm like, this is great. And then I always, from then on, whenever Tim was at the Comedy Catch, I opened for him pretty much. And in his later years, Tim diabetic, he wouldn't sell merch after the show. He wouldn't even talk to anybody. But I was selling merch, and Tim Lee. So I would make like $800 a night because people wanted to buy something, and Tim wasn't out there. And I learned so much from that guy, both good and bad. Yeah, I'm not going to speak ill of the dead. I love Tim, but let's face it, he got in his own way a lot. Yeah. But I would emulate him for so long until finally, you know, Michael Alfano was one of the guys that was like, hey, Tim was better at dealing with hecklers than you are. You should just shut up. You know, like, let Tim do that. You're going to get your ass kicked.
Yeah. You know what was funny about Tim was that he did play to the back of the room. He was really not in anybody's court. He said whatever he wanted to say, and it just turned out to be good with the audience too.
He was just so brilliant that it just kind of, and there are comics who also get mainstream appeal, like regardless of how people feel about him now, Louis C.K. sort of fit that mold to where like comics loved him as much as audiences loved him. But Brian Regan's one of those guys. But usually if someone's really, really loved by the masses, comedians are like, okay, whatever, you know, which is so stupid, which is so dumb. I'm so over that now. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had to look at someone and go, you couldn't follow Dane Cook on your best day. On your best day, you couldn't follow him. So quit talking shit. Yeah.
So thinking about that first time you got on stage at 16, obviously you weren't really old enough to be in the comedy club. What was it, like an open mic, or what was it?
So it was an open mic, but this is any actual comedians listening, this is going to blow your mind. Actually, the first time I ever performed, paid gig. I got paid $100 to host. Nice. I know. For the record, before I get ahead of myself, I didn't make another dollar for another like 5 years. Yeah. This was during the time of, speaking of Dane Cook, the time of MySpace. Yeah. And like, there wasn't really a YouTube, there wasn't Facebook, there wasn't anything, but there was MySpace. And on MySpace, the only kind of creative outlet there was, aside from that, posting videos wasn't a thing yet, but there was a blog section, and I had a blog where I would write my funny jokes and stories and yada yada. And this dude from Chattanooga followed me on there, and he messaged me one day, and he goes, "Hey man, are you a stand-up comedian?" I said, "No, but I sure would like to be. You know, once I'm able to drive and get to the club and stuff, I'm going to do that, but I'm just working up the material now." And he goes, "Well, if you can if you can get to Amigo's Mexican restaurant on this Friday, whenever it was, I don't remember. And if you can host this open mic, I will give you $100. And as soon as he said $100, I'm like, well, I'll figure something out, you know, because this would, I mean, I was 16 years old. So this is like 2004. $100 was more than it is now, is basically all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because gas was like 80 cents. So I was like, okay, man, but I don't really know. I don't have much material. And he goes, all this stuff that you write, man, that's material. Just say that. Just say all that stuff. So I was like, all right. So I take what I think is like 15 minutes. Turns out it's 7. You know how that goes.
Of course. Yeah.
And I go there, but that was enough to open the show and then introduce all these other acts. And my buddy filmed it on tape, like an actual tape, you know, and I really wish that I still had that. Well, there's part of me that's glad that I don't, because I know that it'd be hard to watch, but I remember being up there and my leg shaking so bad that there was no way people weren't noticing. I mean, like my literal knees were knocking, and I'm just kind of getting through it. And it didn't go that well. But when I was there, one of the guys that was doing the open mic was this guy named Wade Cardwell, who turns out booked the B room at the Comedy Catch. And I got to be buddies with him. And he was like, I told him it's my first time. And he's just like, man, you know, I booked the B room. If you want to come anytime, you know, come on. And we ended up developing a friendship. And I was just at the B room every day in the grill, the Giggles Grill, it was called. And I didn't miss one opportunity. I mean, this is what I wanted to do. So it wasn't like, once I started doing it, I'm so glad, I'm so fortunate that like I didn't go, oh, that was way harder than I thought, and I wasn't as good as I thought. I was just like, I know I can. Like, I know I can do this. So I just I ate shit for a long time, and then finally one day, it's not like one day, oh, I was this great comedian, but one day the moves kind of clicked, you know? And I was like, okay, I know my jokes might not be the funniest, but I know how to write them and I know how to tell them. So, and the thing is, you know this, like I don't even count really the years from 16 to like almost 24, because what 16 to 24-year-old knows anything to talk about?
Right.
Like now, I will tell you this, in those 8 years, I was a master at talking about my ding dong. You know, like,
oh, yeah.
But the good thing is, like, in those 8 years, even though I didn't have anything to talk about, that's still 8 years of stage presence that I got. So by the time I found out what I wanted to talk about, I knew better than anyone at my level how to do it.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about that, the young kids, because, you know, one thing I don't miss during the pandemic is open mics, because it was, you know, before I'd go up, it'd be eating ass, dicks. It was just all of that. And it's okay. I mean, if you can make it funny, if you can make anything funny, that's okay. But most of it wasn't. So, you know,
absolutely. I mean, I don't believe there are, like, obviously hack premises is such a thing, but I don't know, in a couple specials ago, Brian Regan did an airplane joke, and it's like, most people tell you, oh, you can't do airplane jokes anymore. It's like, right, but when you think of a good one, you still try.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think it's kind of a rite of passage. You got to do that shitty stuff for a while. Absolutely. in order to know what's good. And a lot of the first years you're on stage, it's just getting to know the stage and the microphone and how to breathe and look at the audience and stuff like that. I mean, that's in the first years, that's actually more important than the words.
Without a doubt. That's why I'm like so glad I started when I did. Like, I've always thought, man, maybe if you didn't start so early, and maybe if you went to college, then when you started, you would have had more to talk about. And I think that's undeniably true. But like, you can't replace those, like, again, by the time I'm 24 years old, I have 8 years in, you know? And again, like I said, even though I don't know what I'm talking about, that I had the stage presence. If you do stand up, you know, I was the house MC at the Comedy Catch. So I'm doing all the shows in the main room and Giggles Grill and the open mic across town. I'm doing like at least 8 sets a week, not in New York, you know? So if you can get on stage 8 times a week for like 7, 8 years, you're gonna if the if the audio is stripped, you will look like a stand-up comedian. You know what I mean? Like if you just look, you're like, this fucking guy looks like he knows what he's doing.
And that's half the battle.
Yeah.
Now your subject matter, I went through and watched a lot of stuff, a lot of the old stuff, and it's funny. A lot of it was in Huntsville, and my son lives down in Huntsville. So
Rocket City's the best, man.
And we're my wife and I are planning an escape route to Huntsville right now. I'm in Indiana, so but we love that city.
It's great.
I mean, all the breweries are just worth it.
The breweries are fantastic, and next time you're down there, go to G's and get you some soul food.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the best. I'm 2 hours away, and I have made the drive just to get G's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's cool. So thinking about your subject matter, I mean, you've got a pretty, I guess it's a pretty, it's a point of view. You've got a point of view, and it's basically, okay, I'm the Southern guy, but guess what? Not all Southern people think this way. We're not, we're not all red state people.
Yeah.
And you do it. I think you do it in a way that you can make everybody laugh, because you're getting the right wingers to laugh at themselves a little bit, and they do. I know they do.
They do.
And then you're getting us more liberal guys to laugh along with you. Is that something that you went into intentionally, or did Trump help that?
Trump put it on steroids. We'll put it that way. Like, I've always sort of been this way. Like to me, like, comedy is always sort of like going against the grain and sort of being contrarian. Like when I was living in New York, I remember I was living in New York pre-Trump. He had just announced that he was going to run. I've still got the New York Post that has, Donald Trump announced his candidacy, and I remember picking it up like, fuck it, all right, but up there, I remember in New York, which is like people think of as like, coastal elites, liberal safe haven. The thing that those comics were doing was like going against liberalism. Like that was their contrarian thing.
Yeah.
But me up there, it was like, well, what do people mostly expect of me as being a Southerner? They'd expect me to be super conservative. I go against the grain. Now, again, I didn't just decide I'm going to be this way because it'll be funny. I just was that way. And then I was like, that's a really, like, nobody's doing that. Like everyone, and that's why I became really good friends with Trey and Drew, because independently of me, they were doing that too. We all had this collective idea of, there were two types of Southern comedians, and there has been forever pretty much. You've got either lean into it real hard and go full cable guy, which there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I love those guys. And I would like to state for the record, anytime someone says, oh, you're like the opposite of the blue collar comedy tour, I'm not trying to do that. I love those guys. But yes, I do have a different point of view. I look up to those guys is what I'm saying. But you was either go full cable guy and be the blue collar comedy tour, or if you're a comedian from the South, you drop your accent completely like David Cross, and otherwise nobody would even know you were from the South. And that's how because you're like, well, I want to talk about smarter and more liberal things. And if I have this accent, nobody will pay attention to me. And we all had the mind of like, why not do both? Like, just be proud of both things. Like, don't drop the accent, be as loud as everybody else is, and say the thing that's on your mind. And who cares if that's different? Hell, in this industry, being different is so rare and a great thing. So just do it. And at the beginning, I mean, same guy I was talking about, Michael Alfano, as much great advice as he gave me, he also was like, hey, this ain't never going to work. he's like, you need to be clean. You need to clean everything up. You need to quit being so divisive. And now, granted, I can't argue that like my earlier years in comedy wouldn't have been better to me if I had done all those things. But I stayed the course, and it now is paying off. And I'm so happy that I did that, because now I get to be uniquely me instead of being a guy who, like, there's a lot of people that like finally this year were just like, okay, I've got to draw a line in the sand. Fuck Donald Trump. I was like, I've been here the whole time. You know what I mean?
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Yeah.
So in doing that, obviously you had a period of where you're trying to learn how to do that on stage. Did you run into any times where that just really backfired on you?
A couple times, but like I wouldn't say severely, and I think it's a credit to. So I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, or close. I'm from Chickamauga, Georgia, but the biggest club was in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Chattanooga, Tennessee is a liberal city for Tennessee. You know what I mean? Like if in any other, like if you put Chattanooga, Tennessee up north, they'd be like, this is a conservative paradise. But here, you know, they have a art district. So what I'm saying is at that club, it was a fairly conservative crowd because there was a lot of older people. The young, hip, liberal types, they weren't going to the comedy club on Brainerd Road. So I had a fairly conservative audience who I was having to get these messages across to. Therefore, I had to learn how to say it without getting the shit beat out of me every week. And so I found a way to give my opinion. I remember the first like really super divisive, I guess, political joke that I did was about, and this will date me a little bit, how long I've been doing stand-up. Don't ask, don't tell was still the policy in the military. That's not been a thing for a while, but it was a thing then. And I had a joke that ended up going from a bit to a chunk to like a 20-minute whole thing about how ridiculous it is that gay people couldn't be in a military. And I did this whole act out of these two guys in a foxhole and like bombs are blasting down on them and they're both scared for their life. And the other one just looks over and goes, I'd sure like to blow you right now. And I'm like, would that ever happen? Like that was pretty much the whole idea of the bit was like, why would you worry about that? Like, when is that opportunity going to present itself? Yeah. And like so many times, I've never once believed that I could change someone's mind completely. I don't think anyone can, but you never know who's on the fence and just hasn't thought about it some way. Yep. And I had so many people that would come up to me that I know are conservatives. They would go, dude, you know, that is kind of ridiculous. Like, they're like, you know, I'm not like saying I'm for gays. I'm just saying like, you're right. That is a little bit ridiculous. And I was able to like, the only way that it would go over is if I was talking to a conservative crowd. Cause like, if I was just doing that in front of my crowd now, it's like, we know, you know,
they're just nodding their heads.
Yeah, exactly. And that happens a lot on this current tour because it's our crowd. And that's what every comedian will always want is like, you always want to find your crowd and then sell tickets to your people. But you do find you're going like, well, it's just confirmation bias and they're applauding more than they're laughing. So now I've got to find a way to be even goofier about this or make them think about something different. Maybe I'll even say something for 5 seconds that I don't even believe in just to see what they say and then be like, I'm fucking with it, you know. But like, I had to learn how to basically make common sense out of these things to where people who maybe didn't agree with me at least could understand my point and not want to kick the shit out of me.
How do you come up with your bits? Because you hit on something about the don't ask, don't tell joke, that it was just a short bit and then it became more like a 20-minute thing. Yeah. How do you work those out?
For me, that's why the pandemic's been so difficult and why, because I've done a bunch of the Zoom shows or whatever, and I have to prepare for them so much differently because I have to write everything fully out because I'm not able to just like riff because in order to riff I need like oh, that worked, I'll keep going on that. I have no idea on the Zoom. But in life, like basically usually what happens to me is the punchline comes to me first. Like I'll watch something on TV or somebody will say something and I'll have a comeback or something and I'll be like, oh man, that's a great line. But obviously you can't just walk on stage and say a line, you know? So I'll go, all right, let's build up to that line. And then it's like, why would I say that line? Okay, now we have the premise. So I know where I need to start and I know where I need to finish. So my first night of working on a joke will be like, all right, I'm going to start with this and I'm going to get to here. I don't know what else. I don't know what the middle is, but I'm going to basically just go and riff on this topic and bleed it for everything it's worth until I start to get tired of it or the crowd starts to get tired of it. And then I'll hit them with the punchline and then that joke's over. And then after I do that about 50 times with like then the next night I'll be like, okay, last night you did it this way. That part that didn't work. I like live edit in my head while I'm going. And I'll add something else. Oh, that worked. Keep that. And I never really write it down too much. I record myself on my phone sometimes way less than I should, for the record. I should do it way more. But I just kind of do it a bunch until I've done it so many times that I've basically done it wrong so many times that, like, what was it? Was it Michelangelo that said, I think it was, by the way, not comparing myself to Michelangelo. I'm just saying, they were like, the way to make a statue is you take a piece of marble and you take away everything that isn't the statue. You know, that's kind of what I do with a joke. Like I say a bunch of shit and then I take away everything that wasn't good. And then after that, it's like, well, 50 other audience have approved all of these words. And then if I think of something funnier, I'll add a tag, of course. And that's how a 5-minute joke for me, if I come up with a 5-minute joke in January, I guarantee you it's going to be bare minimum 12 to 13 minutes in December.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then probably back to 8 when I shoot it, you know.
Yeah, that's it's great that you can do that on the fly like that. It's hard for some people like me. It's really hard for me to think that through. And I have to record myself every single set because, and even though I'm an old man, I'm a much newer comic, and it's very telling on what's funny and what's not funny. Because when you're up there, you're just in the moment. You don't know.
For sure.
You get an idea, but you don't know.
Exactly.
This has been okay. Political arguments I can get into, and it doesn't even faze me because I know where I stand. But comedy arguments really piss me off sometimes. So there's this argument going on, and I shouldn't have even watched it. I didn't comment, and I shouldn't have watched it. It was on social media about American comedy not being a meritocracy. How do you feel about American comedy? Do you think that if you're funny enough, you can do well, or do you think that you have to know people?
I mean, look, there's examples of both. What I think is that the cream ultimately does rise to the top, and that just because you know somebody, you still have to bring it. Like the reason that Taylor Swift was able to get seen so early is because, yes, her dad had some money and he was able to put some of that money into distribution of a record. But the reason that Taylor Swift still sells out Madison Garden right now is because she was good the whole time. You know what I'm saying? Like Nick Kroll, for example. Nick Kroll's dad's like a billionaire. So, yes, it was easier for Nick Kroll to like hang out with the Upright Citizens Brigade. He didn't have to go to work. He could do all, like, obviously there's privilege involved. But if Nick Kroll sucked, people wouldn't let him just ruin their shows all the time. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I get both. Like, for instance, I grew up white, and my dad made a pretty good living. Things have been easier for me than they are for some black comedians I know that are from the same area. Some of them, however, I still am funnier than them, and I've worked harder. But again, I was able to work harder. Sometimes somebody has to go take care of their family, and I didn't have to do that. But again, like, that whole like, oh, well, they're only there because of this. It's like, I think that'll get you like one shot, you know. I think that'll get you one shot. And then if you suck, then okay, for instance, like Chet Hanks. Do you know who Chet Hanks is?
I don't know that name.
Okay, it's Tom Hanks' son.
Okay.
And he really wants to be a rapper. And he's not.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, but the thing is, you've never heard, like, he's got every opportunity in the world. He's not that good of a rapper, and therefore he's not #1 on the Billboard charts.
Yeah.
So Tom Hanks being his dad didn't mean shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he was really, really good, then Tom Hanks being his dad means everything. But like, that'll get you the opportunity for sure. But if you suck, like, you know, Kevin Hart said one time in Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, Hollywood is undefeated. You can't beat Hollywood. Like, if you're good, you can make it for a while, and then Hollywood's done with you. If you're not good, they're not just going to let you not be good. Like, Pauly Shore's a guy who maybe kept getting the opportunities because his mom was Mitzi. And I don't know, but it's not like he's selling out arenas. I mean, he still does comedy clubs and stuff, and I'm not going to shit on Pauly. I'm just saying, like, I don't know, man. I think that you do definitely have to have the talent.
Yeah. And I agree. thinking about when you were in the thick of it and touring, did you see anybody, obviously you get different features and stuff like that. Did you see anybody that you thought was better than where their station was right now?
Oh, I mean, dude, I know plenty. That's why I'm saying it's not always this way. Because to me, Dale Jones is one of the funniest people they've ever lived. He's so funny, and he's a nationally touring headliner. But to me, he should be a household name, and I can't figure it out. I don't know why. Like, I mean, you do have to have luck on your side. Like, it's just like sometimes you just, like, I mean, shit, man. I'm just now. This is my ego talking. I'm just now getting the recognition I think I deserve.
Yeah.
17 years into the game, but Dale's been doing it for 25 years, and I think he's the guy I've probably learned the most from as a comedian, and he should be further along. And again, like, it's not that he don't work his ass off, and it's not that he's super funny. I don't know what it is. Like, sometimes it's like if you'd have been born 5 years earlier or 5 years later, and you just never can. Like, who knows? Like, I don't know, man. But yeah, I see those dudes a lot. And that's why it's hard for me to just say, oh, well, if you are funny and you bust your ass, then you'll make it. But you also have to, like, what is making it? He pays all his bills by being a stand-up comedian.
Right.
To most comedians, I'd say 95% of people who ever try to do comedy would love to be where he's at.
Yeah.
But to me, he should be way up there. Like that's the thing for, like, dude, I can look at I follow Nashville stand up on Instagram, and I love Zanies. I love Nashville. It's a great place. They'll post like a list of like open micers going up on a specific night, and it'll be like a 40 deep list, and I won't know one person on that list. And this is a stand-up comedy scene 2 hours from my house. There's a lot of people trying stand-up comedy. And there's a good chance I'll never see any of those people's names again. That's just how it goes. So, it's just really hard for me to say, well, if you work hard enough, you'll make it, when like a million people are trying to do what you're trying to do.
At what point did you find out that you needed to have some business sense about you, not just the art of comedy, in order to, first of all, not get screwed on money and stuff like that? When did that occur to you?
Honestly, like maybe 3 years ago. and like I already had a manager and agent when it occurred to me. Like, dude, I can't tell you, like, when we started the Well-Read Comedy Tour, like, I didn't really, like, in my mind, it was like, good, right on. I should get this. I should be able to just go on this tour with this guy and sell out these theaters. And now I don't have to worry that my manager takes care of this. My agent takes care of this. The club's full when I get there. And I was just getting drunk and writing my stupid little jokes and performing and getting better. And I was like, hey, man, like, if I'm the best, then the money will follow. That's how that works. Which I think, that's always been my attitude when my friends are like, don't you want to be rich? And I'm like, I want to one day have the best television show on TV. And if you do that, you will be rich. So yes, I want to be rich. But like, without that first part, no, I don't just want to be rich. Like, I wouldn't just give up like, if someone came to me right now and they were like, hey man, I'll get you a job at this big firm and you could be making $500,000 a year. Just, I'd be like, that's not how I want to do that. Like, I want the $500,000, but not doing that. So no, thank you. But really just in the past 3 years and definitely this past year, I've started being a lot more business savvy and a lot more like, hey, you don't have to say yes to everything, or hey, don't do this, or that's maybe not good. Like, I hate even saying your brand, but it's like, that might not be your thing. Don't do that. It's a hard thing to do, but at the end of the day, I'm like, now I'm looking for like, okay, well, I want like, let's say I've got this idea for a short film. If I play the game a little bit and are more business savvy, then I'll be able to make enough money that in like a couple years, if I want to take a whole year off the road and make this short film, I can do that. So be smart about it. Like I used to think that like you weren't a true comedian unless, like, if you gave a shit about the business part, then you weren't really an artist. You know what I mean? And I've slowly just been like, no, dude, you need, like, if you really want to get a lot of stuff done, you need to care about the money. Cause like, to me, it's not about like, I want to have so much money that I can get a boat, you know? It's like, I
Yeah.
want to be able to do exactly what it is that I want to do all the time. And money lets you do that.
Mm.
Period. It just does. Like if I had a couple $1,000,000 in the bank, the screenplay I have right now, I'd just go make the fucking pilot. I just go
Yeah.
make it. It wouldn't matter.
Mm.
I just go do it.
Yeah. And it's funny, having management, sometimes it puts you in a comfortable position because they're taking care of stuff,
Yeah.
but they don't always see the same opportunities as you do, and they don't have the same long range goals. So you sometimes, you know, saying no to stuff is important, and also understanding what you want to accomplish, because I mean, they're making money if you get booked and you want to do something else. You want to do the short film, and getting to that sometimes is contrary to what management wants you to do.
Absolutely. And it's not just, you know, having the good business sense, but it's just being professional in like all aspects. Like, you know, used to, I think people like romanticize the drunk, disheveled artist, and really at the end of the day, it's like, you know what, no matter what you're doing, no matter how good you think you are, you need to treat people the way that they need to be treated, and you need to respect people's time. If you tell Scott you're going to do his podcast at 4, log on a little bit before 4. And if you can't do it, tell him a couple days before, you know, like just be on top of your shit. And it's not, I actually am sober right now, and haven't drank in this year, which I know we're just in February, but it's been no surprise to me that these have been like the most successful 4 months of my career. Like I've just kind of gotten on top of everything, and it's like talent doesn't mean anything if you don't know where to put it or you aren't putting it somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So like, I never was the video guy. I was never a guy that was going to make videos and put them on the internet. Then we had the pandemic, and I was just like, dude, you can't go on stage right now, but you've got this innate desire to create and make people laugh. You're going to have to figure something out. And then I did this thing called the Buttercream Dream. And ever since then, I've paid literally all my bills with that character, because I just decided, hey, you gotta, like, you're not on the road. You gotta figure this out. You gotta be a big boy. And man, if I'd have figured that out, like when I was 24, dude, I think I'd own the world. Like I really do. I really do. And like now it's like, oh, I gotta make up for all this lost time of being an idiot.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that pivot you had to do the video, because you were playing to your fans a little bit, but you were playing to a whole new audience that was into the whole video thing. How did you, and you got pretty successful pretty quickly. How do you think that happened?
Man, I think it's just one of those things where, you know, they say, oh, there's nothing new under the sun, but every now and then something happens and they're like, you know what? I've never seen a shirtless hillbilly with a wrestling belt cutting wrestling promos on politicians. Damn it, that's actually pretty new, you know? Yeah. And it wasn't like I thought to myself, no one's ever done this before, I will be successful. But like, that is the reality of it.
Yeah.
I'm a huge wrestling fan, have been my whole life. Like when I was a kid, like I always wanted to be a wrestler. And then I got older and realized like, oh, they really get their ass whipped. And I'm like, I'll just do the entertainment part, you know? And so like during the pandemic, it was like, hey, the cool thing about the internet is there ain't no rules. Like you can do whatever you want. Like if you want to be a wrestler, fucking go be a wrestler. And so I think the reason I've been so successful with it is a mixture of two things. Number one, what I just said, it's new. Nobody's really seen that. Not that people haven't done fake wrestler characters, but like politically, I don't think. And I feel like at this point, someone would have like, you know, told me about another one. We'd have been introduced. So I'd like to think I'm the only one doing that. But also, I think because I'm literally having some of the most fun of my life doing it, I think that comes through. Like it comes through as very I mean, I say authentic. Clearly, it's a put on. Like I don't really. I mean, I have a Southern accent, but it ain't really this big of one, you know what I mean? Like that's a little bit of a put on, but like I think people can, like I'm having a lot of fun with it, and when I'm having a lot of fun, I write better and I write more creatively, and it just like I can't wait to put one of those out, and it's never been forced. Like I've never once been like, I got to do a buttercream dream video
Yeah.
today. It's just, I'll be watching CNN and something will piss me off. And my inner monologue, I didn't realize, has always been that guy, you know?
Yeah.
But me screaming, I say me screaming isn't good, but actually the last 2 videos I had go viral was just me screaming. But like, to me, it was like, all right, I can be this guy who just screams his opinions, but it's like, that's going to come off as more mean. But if I have a wrestling belt and I make some joke, then it's like, it's funny. And it's one of those ways where like I can get people that don't agree with me to listen to my point of view because it's so ridiculous.
And I'm not dissing it at all, but it gets to the point where it's on the edge of cartoonish, and that is good.
Yeah,
because the cartoons can get the stuff across and not get in trouble for it. And
I make no bones about it. Bugs Bunny was one of my biggest inspirations in comedy. Yeah. My top 3 inspirations in comedy are Jerry Seinfeld, Mel Brooks, and Bugs Bunny. So I take cartoonish as a compliment.
Now, thinking about, you did another pivot, and just recently you're doing the Biden press secretary thing. How's that coming across?
Kenny Ray, dude. It honestly, like, the first, I'll say this now, obviously I've got a way bigger following now, so you have to take that in consideration, but the first 2 Kenny Ray videos did better than I remember the first 2 Buttercream Dream videos do. And I think that's another one of those things where the reason that I did the pivot there, I've been doing a little less Buttercream. Now I do a lot of Buttercream Dream on Cameo. He's paying the bills, but like, because I was talking with my wife and I was like, you know, for 4 years I've been on the offensive because I've really hated Donald Trump and Donald Trump's been in the White House. I said, you know, what if I go on the defensive? I've never really come at it from that position. And there's no more defensive person in the world than a press secretary for somebody. Their literal job is to defend the president on what he did and spin things. And I thought, what if like my uncle was that, if he had that job, like what would he be saying? And basically, that guy, if the Buttercream Dream is my inner monologue whenever Ted Cruz says something stupid, Kenny Ray is my inner monologue whenever I read something that somebody I went to high school with said that commented that was just so stupid. Like, did you see Joe Biden stutter? And the inner monologue that talking is hard. Are you kidding me? You get up there and try to do it. Like, that's my inner monologue. And so that comes out in those videos. And I love doing them. They're fun to write. And I get to come from a more defensive place instead of screaming. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And obviously my former guest, Brent Terhune, was a guest on it. He played the Alex Jones character.
He did. And I love that. I was so glad. Yeah. He reached out to me and he was like, we got to do a Kenny Ray or something. Yeah. Brent's a blast to work with, man. He's just such a sweet guy.
Yeah. Now, I don't like to talk about myself, but because you've done these videos,
you're not really a comedian then, are you?
No. Yeah. Well, not on this podcast. I don't like, on somebody else's I will for hours. Right. But I've got this character that I was doing Zoom comedy too, and I got really tired of doing my act. And so I just started coming up with characters. And I got this guy, it's Eugene from Smyrna, and he's a conspiracy theorist, but he calls himself a conspiracy provist. And I want to tag you in some of these and have you critique them because I think I'm onto something, but I don't know if it's enough to even try to go any further. But basically I've got 2 kids. I got baby Kid Rock and baby Miranda Lambert. They always get in my guns and shoot each other, and I ground them and stuff, and it's a whole thing.
Well, I'd be happy to critique, but I will tell you, if you're having fun doing them, then you are onto something.
Yeah. Well, I have really enjoyed it. The thing that backfired on me is I took over my podcast. I said that I hacked into the Behind the Bits podcast TikTok, and that just didn't go over because it wasn't my brand, and everybody was like, what the fuck are you doing? And so I've got to make my own channel, I guess, and do it that way. But
that whole brand thing, man, it's so wild when you do something that is just a little bit different than you normally do, people really kind of lose their mind on that. It's really wild. Like, I've got a buddy, and I posted a video one time, and like, I'll admit that it wasn't funny. I wasn't really trying to be funny. I was just like upset with how ridiculous the current situation was. And he messaged me and he showed me that video and he was like, "Hey man, I don't get it." And I was like, "What do you not get?" And he's like, "I mean, are you not a comedian?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, this isn't funny." And I'm like, "Well, I'm also Corey, the person,
Yeah.
like I'm sorry, but I think that I'm allowed moments of lucidity like that. But
Yeah.
if you start doing stuff like I'll sometimes I'll post stuff about wrestling and I'll have some of my fans that have, I guess, just signed on to me for my, and I'm putting this in quotes, scathing political satire.
Yeah.
And they'll just be like, "I don't understand. Why are you talking about wrestling?" I'm like, "'Cause I fucking like wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that sometimes. If you don't like it, that's fine. But don't think, I mean, like, I hope that I entertain you, but sometimes what I like is gonna be reflected on my page. You
Yeah. Yeah.
dipshit."
Yeah, and it gets you a wider audience. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I
you
just like
don't
it.
have to watch that if you don't like it. If you don't like the wrestling,
Go
then just
away.
don't
It's
watch it.
fine. It's
Yeah.
totally fine.
Thinking about things opening back up and stuff like that, do you have a plan for getting back out there and going in and performing?
Nope.
Yeah.
So here's how it's kind of worked out. I tour with two other dudes, Trey Crowder and Drew Morgan. And if we all toured solo, I think we would all three already be back on the road doing like some half open venues. But basically, if we're all three splitting money anyways, then we start looking at these clubs like, all right, I got to get a flight to here.
Yeah.
They live in California and I live here. So no matter where we play, one of us is going to have to do a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
And we start running the numbers. It's like, honestly, it makes more sense to just sit at home and do another online show, and then we can make money doing that. But we're not going to make any money doing a half-filled place if it's required to be half-filled. So our whole thing is like, we're just going to wait it out until we can go back to doing it exactly the way that we did it before. Now, I think that might be a lot of wishful thinking. Eventually, we might have to just be like, all right, man, look, the world's just going to be different from now on. This is what we got to do. But the vaccines are starting to roll out and we've all kind of just been like, all right, let's just, we've all got enough projects this year. I've been very, very fortunate that even taking my tour salary away from me, I was able to do well this year because of new podcasts and, this buttercream dream character I created that, like, dude, I'm making enough money on Cameo to live, which is I can't believe that people pay money for me to give a shout out on Cameo, but they do, and it pays the bills. So I'm fine right now, and luckily I live in East Bumfuck, Georgia, and so my mortgage ain't nothing. I can survive, but I think come August, if things aren't like if we're not starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we're gonna have to have a big conversation. But who knows?
Yeah. No doubt. Before we wrap up here, can you talk a little bit about the podcast?
Yeah. So I just started Through the Screen Door podcast with my co-host Matt Kuhn, and it's sort of obviously we get political just because a lot of stuff is going on that's too hard to ignore. I mean, I live in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
But the way the elevator
I'm sorry.
pitch, it's okay. It's rough. The elevator pitch for that show is basically it's a pop culture podcast with a Southern twist. It's sort of my love letter to variety shows and like Johnny Carson and stuff. Like it usually always starts out with me doing a monologue that is very often intentionally corny, like intentionally like late 60s, early 70s Johnny Carson monologue. And then we usually do like a sketch, and then we'll talk about movies, the Marvel universe. We have this segment called Bread or Wine where we watch a classic movie and decide how it's held up over time. I usually do this segment, which I call a redneck movie monologue or a hillbilly soliloquy, whichever one you prefer. And it's where I pick a certain type of redneck and I perform a famous movie monologue as them, such as I've done. I think I did the which was it? I did the famous speech from Glengarry Glen Ross as the Southern Baptist preacher's wife who's always about to cry.
I gotta hear that one. That's one of my favorite movies.
Listen, Scott, I need y'all to hear me right now. That's the Southern. That's her, and so she did your coffee is for closers. You listen. So we have a lot of fun on it. That's sort of my passion project. I'd always wanted a side podcast project because I do the Well Read podcast with the guys, and we always recorded that on the road. That podcast sort of became like our audio journal of being on the road. And I always wanted to do something different, but I was like, God dang, it's hard enough just to get this one out when we're traveling and doing all this stuff. And then when the pandemic happened, I think for the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, I was like, this ain't gonna be no big deal. And then when I realized it was gonna be a big deal, I let myself have like a couple weeks break because I was like, hey man, you've been traveling for like 4.5 years straight. You're allowed to decompress. And then after that, it was like, okay, dude, all this stuff that you've been saying, well, I'd do it if I wasn't on the road. You got to do it, because if you don't, then you have to admit that you're full of shit and you weren't going to do it. Obviously, the first thing I decided to go with was watching The Wire. So once I got that out of the way, then I started a podcast.
One of the best shows ever, man. I've watched that 3 times.
I've done twice now.
Yeah, I've done that in the X-Files 3 times. Those are my babies.
The X-Files literally 2 days ago.
Yeah, you're gonna love it.
I'm having a good time.
Yeah, it's great. The last few seasons got kind of weird, but it was a great show. So where can people find you if they want to see your videos and stuff?
You can go to watchyaboys.com. That's watchyaboys.com. That'll take you to my YouTube. You can also just go to CoreyRyanForrester.com, or as I tell everybody, just Google me. I come up, all sorts of stuff, all my Twitters and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the outtake that you did of buttercream because I do some promo stuff, and I've recorded some Eugene stuff, and sometimes it's 20 takes to get it right.
Yeah,
and it was just a whole bunch of fuck.
Yeah. I had somebody ask me yesterday. They were like, "Why don't you post more Buttercream Dream outtakes?" And I say, "There's only one reason, and that's because the Buttercream Dream is usually flawless."
Yeah,
this was 1 in a million, son.
Well, that's great. Well, Corey, you've been a great guest, and I'm really glad we got to talk. I've learned a lot, and I just wish you the best, because when I move down to Huntsville, I know that maybe we'll run into each other. Please. And you can see what a shitty comic I am, and that'll be great.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott. And I'm being serious. It was really awesome to sit here and talk about pretty much nothing but comedy for an hour. I haven't got to do that in a long time. I don't know how long. It's been a while.
Well, great. That's what this show's all about. So you fit the bill really good.
Well, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Corey.
Absolutely. Take care.